You guys really don't know when it's good or bad when it comes right down to it. You really don't know because you don't know what we're trying to do. You guys don't look at the films. You don't know what happened. You really don't know. You think you know, but you don't know, and you never will.
To come home, because I have a very special love.
The media public doesn't know. You guys don't know. Sometimes it won't. I can tell you it won't be good, and you'll see it won't be good. Sometimes you'll think it's good, and it isn't any good. Sometimes you'll think it's bad, and it was pretty darn good. Sometimes you'll think it's bad, and it was bad. But basically, you really don't know.
Welcome back to the Beta Boys Weekly Packers Corner podcast here. The Pack are still alive. We got it done against the Rams 24-12. Overcame Baker Mayfield led a Rams squadron there. So I don't know if there's a ton to be said for that effort, but we got the win, so we'll take that. What was your overall feel and sense of the story and the meaning of this matchup here, Schmitty, this week?
When will this team finally disappoint us again? Just do it already. Disappoint us. Thank goodness. Christmas Day seems like a very delicious day to disappoint Packer Nation. It's coming. I wish it would have been 3 weeks ago or what have you to win these 2 games in a row. It's all great. Oh glory, oh happy days. Aaron Rodgers is back. He's taking care of us just for it to all crumble in our hands here in less than a week.
Well, not exactly a sunny outlook there from Schmitty Dad. What was your main takeaway from our performance this week?
I'm worried about Schmitty again here now. I thought Schmitty was all in for Aaron Rodgers and let him ride and let him take us wherever he's going to take us. But it sounds like he's ready for this thing to tank so we can bring on the lover boy.
I think
I
Schmitty's
don't
ready
know.
for Aaron to come back and reload next year.
Oh,
A-
next. Well, then if that's the case, then you want to build as much momentum at the end of this year as possible. Yeah, hey, look, I get it. Schmitty, I hear what he's saying. The odds are long and it doesn't look great for the Packers.
I mean, one more win this week and the odds don't look super long.
That's what it comes down to. And you know what? For the sake of the season, my expectations have changed. Maybe Packer Nation's expectations have changed. And I have a new criteria for a successful season. At the beginning of the year, it was Super Bowl or bust, right? I mean, I think we all kind of felt that way after the 3-13 win seasons. But now, just get me to January and a meaningful game against the Minnesota Vikings. And I'll take what happens. I know we could get disappointed, but is it possible we could have such a game?
Was there any way, if we get to a meaningful game, like you say there against Minnesota, that we could have a chance to play spoiler and foil their plans, even if it doesn't mean anything for us, Dad?
Well, the meaning of the game is that if you somehow beat Miami, and I'm not saying that's likely, but if somehow you do and you gather yourself and gain momentum, and let's just interject one thing that's amazing about this team. Can we all agree that Keyshawn Nixon is unbelievable? And he has completely revolutionized the notion of returning a kick from the end zone. You wonder where the heck was he last year? But at any rate, so rallying around that agreed upon point of positivity. If you get to beat the Vikings at Lambeau Field, you put yourself in a position to be their playoff opponent in the dome, whatever we call that thing, over the bank, in a delicious matchup in mid-January. I mean, this is what I'm living for now. And we probably will be underdogs in that. but could you just get me to a hope for that little spark that remains, and that now defines my goal for the season.
I mean, that would be a blast to see that come to pass. I was talking about heading down to Lambeau this week to see the Rams Packers matchup with Jordan. My wife there said she'd go to a game there at some point in time, so we just about pulled the trigger on this one. I think, you know, in terms of the excitement there and so forth, maybe it was an okay one not to have be the first matchup. There wasn't quite as much on the line there with a lowly Rams team, and it was kind of a Packer game that we were in a little bit of a purgatory there, right? It's not super meaningful to lose. I guess it would have eliminated, or super meaningful to win, would have eliminated us most likely with a loss. But it doesn't feel like that was the game that meant very much. We kind of expected to win, and we know that the eyes are forwards towards Miami here. That said, we were encouraged by Keyshawn Nixon, of course. Were you discouraged in particular by anything you saw there, Schmitty?
Discouraged. Third down conversion by the Rams. I wasn't impressed by that. Wasn't impressed by Aaron Rodgers and Lazard up the sideline for that
That was
gross
a
pick.
poor throw.
And it came out that it was Lazard's fault on that. Apparently, okay. Um, what else? I outside of those things, I mean the kick returning was superb. Um, really, when you're a 7-point favorite, that really hasn't gone our way this year, has it? Can think of a few games where that was the case, and we let a lot of people down. And this is the found ourselves in this position because of it. Um, but this team looks better than we did when we played the New York teams in Washington and those other games. Um, so there's some hope and promise there.
I was a little
Um,
discouraged by the first half in general. I didn't have a great feeling. We had the lead there, but it wasn't a super convincing first half. We took care of business, it felt like to me in the second half and never felt out of control. We had, the turnover battle in the first half wasn't as beneficial to us as it was in the second half. And I don't know, I didn't get particularly worried down the stretch there. So that was nice. It's been a while since even with a win that it wasn't sort of an angst filled win there. So we didn't have to have any cardiac events this week. So I appreciated that. What was your sentiment on things that are need to be better against the Dolphins here, Dad?
Well, I think you have to take stock and have hope in what you saw in the opening drive. You saw, I mean, for the first time in, I don't know, half a season, a methodical, time consuming, good looking opening drive. It ended in a field goal. But we marched down the field when they went 3 and out on the next possession. Holy mackerel. I mean, these are nice baby steps. Then after not being terribly opportunistic the rest of the first half, you come back in the second half, a methodical, beautiful drive to open up the second half and score. We should have had 41 points in that game. I mean, and that's the way we're going to need to play against the Dolphins. You get a 52-yard kick return in the second half, and you get 0 points out of it. You get an interception deep in their end, and you get 0 points out of it. And then at the end there, we could have punched it in for another touchdown. So, you're looking at another 21 to 17 points that were right there for the taking. So that's the way we're going to have to play against Miami. It's that whole complementary football thing, taking advantage of the field position, the opportunities that are afforded you, and we'll see if we're ready to take that next step. I just the one of the biggest disappointing things to me, and Schmidt kind of hit on it. Lazard fell on his sword, is what he did. Nobody wants to say Aaron Rodgers is wrong, and this is what's wrong with the team. Aaron is all up in arms over Christian Watson, not seeing him poke himself in the wrist and whatever else he does. And meanwhile, he throws the ball 20 yards over Lazard's head for a pitiful interception that could have been pivotal in against a team that is a formidable team. And Rodgers never takes any accountability for that. It's just pointing fingers at the other guys. And so, that's what's bothersome to me. Maybe it's just the optics to us fans is worse than it is to the team, but I have a feeling it's not. I have a feeling those poor rookie receivers are on pins and needles, wondering when they're going to screw up. Lazard has to cover for Rodgers, so that's what's of concern to me. The psychological impact that has on the cohesiveness of the team.
Yeah. In terms of back to maybe a little bit more positive note, I'm kind of with you there on some of the Rogers stuff, but we sure hammered that home without Schmitty here, so I'm sure we'll give him a opportunity to tell us all the great things that Rogers can do for us the last couple games here. Or maybe you're reluctant to do that. We'll have to hear in a moment, Schmitty. But I think one thing, we weren't exactly playing the best quarterback in the NFL. Baker Mayfield certainly had his struggles here. But I was encouraged just by the way the defense played despite that, because we've seen this team go out and lose to a Zach Wilson led Jets team, Taylor Heineke led Commanders team, a tough battle against Bailey Zappi and the New England Patriots. So it hasn't really mattered if we're going up against a professional quarterback this year. There's been cause for concern, right? And this week was a step of positivity that way. I felt like. Were you encouraged by the defense, Schmidt, or did you chalk it up to we were playing Baker Mayfield?
I was encouraged. I thought we got to Preston Smith had a nice game. You had a couple rookies perform. Adrian Amos, he I think Adrian Amos is probably maybe having his best season with the Packers. I really enjoy watching him play. He doesn't make too many mistakes. It's nice when you don't have Darnell Savage out there. Defense looks a lot better for it. Um,
We
but
were given a hard time to Rasul Douglas, right? And just right as we said that,
you
he
know
came up
what?
with a little bit of a gift, but maybe he can make an opportunistic play or two down the stretch here.
Yes, I think that's it. I think I messaged you guys. He got the Diggs payment. You know, he flashed last year, and it was a fun Packers defense with him when he was performing and getting some of those turnovers. But he's definitely shaky, and I would look for offenses to attack him. He seems to be currently the weak link in the secondary. Um, but you need to you win the turnover battle in the NFL. Usually that spells good things. So if that means that he's given up some plays, but we get to see a couple turnovers in our favor because of Rasul, then awesome. I think he's lived up to what we expect of him.
Yeah.
Um,
I know a name that you're going to like to talk about here, Dad. Romeo Dobbs back for the Packers. What do you think his return says for the Packers moving forward here? And what did you think? He didn't play a ton of snaps, but he was involved quite a bit on the snaps he was in. What did you think about his return?
Well, I love the combination of Romeo and Watson together on the field. I just think they're dynamic. They complement each other beautifully. Um, you saw kind of that jet motion action with Watson out of the backfield late in the game, and takes the cornerback completely off that side of the field and opens up a wide open 20-yard across the middle pitch and catch down there to Romeo. And I think those are the kind of things that it brings. I must say that earlier in the season, Matt LaFleur went on quite a pitch with himself, reminding himself that I've got to get Aaron Jones 15 to 20 touches a game, and he needs to have a pep talk with himself and his quarterback that Christian Watson needs 10 targets minimum a game, and he needs to touch the ball 8 to 10 times. And there were opportunities, and you're talking about Rodgers in the first half. He's thrown to his good buddy Randall Cobb underneath when he's got Watson open down the field and he's not looking at him. And I just, you've got to get that ball to Christian. Listen, every time Christian Watson touches the ball, it could be a touchdown. When Randall Cobb touches the ball, it's wonderful, but he's going to get 10 yards, and that's it. So we've got to get the ball in our playmakers' hands with a chance to make something happen after the catch. And I couldn't be more encouraged by Dobbs and Watson
Yeah,
and what the
I'm
future holds for them.
with you there. For the most part, I like your point about an emphasis of getting the ball into Christian Watson's hands, but I think the same is going to be equally true for Romeo Dobbs. I know we've had the big Watson explosion here with all the touchdowns he's accumulated in the last few weeks as a rookie has been pretty impressive, but it's been on the back of a lot of big plays, and I think that's the sort of guy he's going to be. He's going to be a big play guy, and maybe he'll be have a little more polished route tree and those things later on. I think seeing things. I think there's blame to go on both sides when Rodgers is making his arm signals down at the end of the game, and Watson doesn't pick up on it. One situationally, that we should just be running the football there and ending the game. But I think Aaron was aware of the touchdown streak that Watson was on and was trying to pump that up. So you can't criticize it too much. But I said earlier in the season on the podcast that I was a little bit nervous about the between the ears aspect for Christian Watson, and I think he'll catch on eventually. But I've been discouraged by that. I think there's some guys who would have a sense for that situation and be a little bit more aware than he's been at times. So I would really like to see an emphasis on getting Dobbs the ball. I know it was his first game back, but I could say all the negative things that you had to say about Randall Cobb, also about Alan Lazard. He's a big body, he can make plays in the end zone, but I don't think he strikes fear into the heart of any defensive backs in the NFL, particularly. And I would love to see a significant share of the targets from both Lazard and Cobb headed toward Dobbs and Watson. Schmitty, what do you think about the receiving core?
Yeah, I think the receiving core is in safe hands, right? I mean, if we
What do you
lost
think about the
Lazard
target
and
distribution? Maybe I should say.
um, I don't know if that improves with Aaron still being your quarterback. I don't think you're going to see what you like. Maybe there is some favoritism there, and maybe there isn't. But going forward, if you think 3 years from now and you have number 10 playing quarterback and you have your X and Y and Watson and Dobbs, I think you're quite pleased. With the only thing I would say is we do need a big playmaking tight end. I think that really is something we need in Matt LaFleur's offense that we currently don't have.
Who's the big
But
time? I was reading a little bit about the draft. You're probably aware of the name here, Schmitty, because I know you were researching the draft pretty early on in the season. But isn't there a pretty big time tight end that's supposed to go early in the first round that we might have our eyes on?
who would that be?
We'll have to do a little research. I'm forgetting the name. I just came across a name here in preliminary search, but as he was being described, maybe sort of a more athletic, dare I say, George Kittle was sort of the comparison that I was drawing.
Ooh,
Not that Kittle isn't athletic, but he's very well rounded and respected for both his blocking ability and receiving ability. And that was the description I was getting. So I know there's someone on the college slate. I'll have to do a little research next time for what that actual name is. But I know that's someone that could be targeted depending on what draft pick we end up with here as we come down the final stretch. You alluded to briefly there a bit of news that we haven't discussed since we last met here with number 10. And those are the rumors surrounding potentially him asking or requesting a trade if he's not the guy next year. What do you make of those rumors? And do you think that's a reasonable thing that he might do? And how should the front office respond if anything like that's going on behind the scenes, Dad?
Well, I just have to tell you guys internally here, I'm not hearing Schmitty. So if I'm repeating anything he says, it's 'cause I haven't been able to hear his audio. Um, you gotta kind of empathize with Jordan Love. I just realized that he is in the same draft class as Tua, Herbert, and Jalen Hurts, and there might be one other guy, and Joe Burrow.
Mm.
Think of what all those guys are doing, having been in the same draft class as Jordan Love, and the thing I think that goes along with that positioning of possibly talking to his agent. I read that he would talk to his agent and decide what to do. I didn't hear about definitely requesting a trade, but
I
what
mean,
I hear
those
him
are the
saying,
headlines, right? They like
yeah,
to
the
kind of
story within
amplify
that
that.
story is that he says, "I'm ready." He's
Yeah.
confident. He believes he's ready. He believes, I think he made some point that I could be doing everything those guys, Tua and Herbert and Hertz, are doing if I've been playing as much as they had. And so I'm excited and ready for the opportunity. I did hear some pretty good things about, it was good that I probably didn't have to play right away. And I've had, I appreciate being able to learn from Aaron Rodgers. So I think he's striking a balance.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him for doing. I mean, if he wasn't talking like that, he's not the right guy. If
I
he
agree.
doesn't have the wherewithal, the desire, the want to, and the positioning to want to get in there and play, then it's not a good sign. So I kind of take it with a grain of salt and say it's part of the territory, and it certainly is going to have to play out, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Speaking of Tua and the Dolphins there, they had the cold weather game up against Buffalo. They don't have to come to the frozen tundra here. We head down to their territory, but I don't think that necessarily is a bad deal for us. We've been a team historically that hasn't fared well late in the season at Lambeau necessarily, at least in the postseason. That said, they have Tyreek Hill, and so a fast basketball game breaking out on grass there doesn't necessarily bode well for us. But what do you think in the warm weather down south there, Schmitty, a win would look like for us? How does that game play out?
Ooh, wouldn't it be real sweet if we got that fake spike for a touchdown
The
to
Marino
lift us
esque.
over? Oh my God, that would be so tasty.
Aaron's
Um,
done that before, right?
he's
He
done
has,
that against the Dolphins,
yeah,
yes. So that would be fun. But it's the Packers are 4-point underdogs. Uh, it we just haven't gotten to see a signature Packers win against a good team or a team that they're not favored against. Like you said earlier, against the Rams, like it never felt that the Packers were in trouble to lose that game. It would be really, really sweet and promising going into the last two games of the year if the Packers could put away the Dolphins and it wouldn't even be a test. Uh, that is going to be very difficult when you have a guy with talent that Tyreek Hill does. Now, what does that look like for us covering on the back end? Uh, Maybe Jair for the first time of the season. It won't happen, but maybe he does get to follow him around the field, and there's a lot of man because he's a really a game breaker, Tyreek Hill. But Tua can be shaky, and if you throw enough stuff at him, he's shown that his accuracy can be a blunder at times. The Packers need to um, they need to protect Aaron Rodgers. The Miami Dolphins defense is actually not much of a slouch. There's not too many weak spots in that D. So um, altogether, Bakhtiari, maybe he comes back and he had appendectomy. I'm not sure what his timetable is, but he would be a great piece to have come back for this game. You need everything to go right for you, and so to do that you need your best players out there playing. But that's what our outlook is
yeah.
going into Sunday.
Saying that, what's your prediction? How does it turn out?
The Packers win by 5. They win by 5, Griffey.
Getting it done. I love the positivity. We've both all three of us have had our Jekyll and Hyde moments this year. A little high up and down and yeah, he did it again to us, didn't he, Dad? He was saying we thought maybe they should just put us out of our misery and now he's vying. You know what? I guess I didn't update the record here. We all should have one more win than is shown on the screen, so I'll have to give us credit for that moving into next week. Dad, what do you think a win would look like? Maybe a little response to Schmidt's answer there. I see you looking rather puzzled.
I,
And
I'm
what's your prediction as well?
perplexed. When we came on, I thought we needed to get Schmidt on some serotonin reuptake inhibitors, some kind of antidepressants when we started the podcast here because he was just ready for it to be over. And
Well, I've been
and
calling our
and
good and absent friend here on the show Lithium Larson, but maybe Schmitty needs a
oh,
little of the lithium as well there.
well, God bless him. I'm glad to hear it. I couldn't hear exactly what he said again with the audio, but
Uh,
a win in Miami would look like um, a kick return for a touchdown, some kind of a turnover deep on their end, a tip ball or something that turns the tide. Rodgers and the receivers getting on the same page and playing the best game of the year is simply what it would take. I looked at the early line because I know Schmitty is kind of a aficionado on the Vegas lines and so forth. I see where we are plus 4 point underdogs, and I think that's probably about right if you're being realistic. And I've found myself being much more realistic about the Packers this year than in the past when I just picked them to win every game. I guess if I'm objectively trying to predict the game, Miami's coming off 3 tough losses on the road to 3 good teams. Just lost to Buffalo last week in a heartbreaker. They're scratching and clawing and playing for their playoff lives. They've had quite a season all year. I, I'd have to pick Miami, and I hope like heck the Packers win. But I guess I'm going to have to say Miami's favored in this one.
yeah. I might have a slightly different outlook on what a win looks like. I'll have to get your guys' thoughts on this, but I think a win for us takes an MVP caliber Aaron Rodgers. I don't see us slowing down the attack there, and I think we are going to need 12 to look like vintage 12 and be putting the ball in spots that only he can. Maybe getting the ball out on rhythm for the majority of the game, but probably have to extend a couple plays too, and maybe break a big one downfield to one of those young receivers we mentioned earlier. But I think it's gonna take him putting the team on his back and getting it done, and that's what we pay him the big money for. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be able to do that, and I certainly wouldn't bet on that happening at this point. So I'm taking the Dolphins. But if we were to find a way, I see that being the way that it would have to happen there. Schmidt, I see you getting a chuckle there. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I just, I find it fun that, it's completely flipped with you two. Uh, you guys want it all to burn down. Come join me down here. It's very warm and toasty.
Schmitty says that we are kind of joining him with burning it all down here now, and that we should join him. But I don't know if we can join you when you just pick the Packers again. You're saying we keep the playoff hopes alive. I kind of feel that if I pick against them and they win, great. I haven't seen anything out of 12 this past week included that would change my mind and think that he's the MVP caliber player that he was for the majority of his career. I just haven't seen it in quite a while.
I would say that you're right. Likely 12 is not going to be able to be that player that he once was. But how about a big game by Quay Walker who's coming? How about number 55, Enik Barre, putting some pressure on the quarterback and creating some turnovers? Um, how about maybe Jair stepping in front of one or something like that to give Rodgers a little boost? I think it's going to take that kind of an effort, a total team thing, and a special teams play, and maybe a kick at the buzzer. But I think Schmidt's playing us like a Stradivarius. He comes on here looking like he's on suicide watch, and the season is over. And by the end, he's smiling at us, picking the Packers. And I just see he's at a good time, uh, using his poker face and playing us like a violin.
A little mental warfare to get us to
I think that's what
pick.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna need to have a little canooper when this is over and try to get my mind right.
We'll have to do that. One final thought touching on Tyreek Hill for you guys. I noticed last week the Bills were able to relatively hold the Dolphins in check and so forth. But was it the crazy fumble that he had and fumble recovery, and then had like an 80-yard touchdown reception still, nonetheless. So even in a game where he's kind of bottled up, he still gets loose, and I just don't see Joe Barry being the guy to bottle him up completely. I just don't see that happening. So I think he's going to be a problem, unless he tweaks an ankle or something. I think that is too much for us to overcome. So hopefully I'm wrong, and we get to head into Minnesota with a meaningful game here in December. And then, as you wished for, maybe that'll give us the chance to have another meaningful one in January. Who knows? But we'll take it one at a time. Certainly appreciate you guys joining us here, and we'll work on the audio for next week. All right. Thanks, guys.
Merry
Sounds good.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everybody. Yep. And his father shoveled horse shit all the days. When the lad was very young, they found a diamond in the dung, and they sent him off to college just to play. Hail, hail, hail to Master Beta, lift your thunder mugs on high, and we'll drink another glass to the biggest horse's ass in the brotherhood of Beta Theta Chi. Go Beta boys!